And we're live.
Hello, everyone. I'm Stephanie Harrington, Director of Constituent Relations at ABET, and I'm here today with Joe Sussman, who's the Chief Accreditation Officer and CIO at ABET, as well as Jeff Ray, who's Dean of College of Engineering and Technology at Western Carolina University, and he's also Chair of the Academic Advisory Council at ABET. Let me get the slides going here, and we'll turn it over to Joe. There we go.
You want to put the slideshow view?
Yes, do you see in slideshow view? Oh, hold on.
This is Nathan, by the way. We just ended the Q&A and the other sessions, so you should be seeing a whole bunch of folks hopping on.
Great.
We'll change the view stuff.
Okay. All right, Joe. Are the slides? Are the slides going?
Now it's good.
Okay, great.
Yes. Is there a suggestion that I wait another minute? Nathan, are you on the line?
Hi, Joe. I am. I would wait maybe one more minute as folks transition over. I see our numbers are still trickling up here.
Great. Joe, I'll reintroduce everyone once we get a few more people.
I can make a pitch for next year's EDI since we've got this dead air. We will be a Venetian in Las Vegas, which is where we were supposed to be last year. So Las Vegas is either very appealing or very unappealing to you, depending on your I'm ready to go anywhere. So Venetian.
Even Las Vegas.
Well, you know, Nathan, there's a lot to Las Vegas besides just the gambling and the shows. There's a lot of nice hiking around there.
That's true. That's very true.
You know, it's a lot of beautiful area.
That's right. Lots of great outdoor stuff.
Okay, the number of participants has stabilized, so I suggest we begin.
Okay.
Sounds
Great. Well, I'll go ahead and introduce everyone. I'm Stephanie Harrington. I'm Director of Constituent Relations at ABET. And I'm here today with Joe Sussman, who's Chief Accreditation Officer and CIO at ABET. We also have Jeff Ray, who's Dean of College of Engineering and Technology at Western Carolina. And he's also Chair of the Academic Advisory Council at ABET. And they're going to talk a bit about our remote operations in the last year, and then we'll have lots of times for question and answer. So, Joe?
Thank you, Steph. Good morning and good afternoon, everyone. We're delighted that you were able to join us this afternoon, today. Jeff and I have historically tried to conduct what we call a listening session, but this year we thought it appropriate to first give you some update on how we addressed the board of directors at ABET and how we dealt with this the accreditation cycle 2021, in which we're still operating and planning for 21-22. We accomplished a great deal, not without a small amount of work. We were worried about sustaining accreditation operations in March, the second week in March, when everybody got slammed. We got slammed as well. We sat around and worried about protecting the health and well-being of everyone with whom we were dealing. And we were worried for you on your behalf and on programs' behalf to protect the viability of the accredited programs and their students. We also wanted to be sure that we didn't do something financially irresponsible, and we wanted to engage all the volunteers. We have on the order of 2,000 volunteers that help make ABET run. All accreditation decisions are made by volunteers, with staff providing institutional support, institutional memory, administrative and infrastructure support. Steph, next slide. I use sort of street slang when I tell people how well we did. We crushed it. We worked hard along many different axes. We did over 880 programs at 316 institutions and outside the US as well. We got positive feedback, and we worked in such a manner that it was successful. All the feedback from all the constituents, all the volunteers, all the staff, everybody understands that in-person reviews is something we'd like to sustain next time best we can. But to talk to you about doing on-site in-person reviews in 21, 22 is speculative at best, because it's impossible. We don't know where we're going to be with COVID. Right now, the news is optimistic, but today's Monday. On Wednesday, there'll be some news that things are not going so well. So next slide, please. So you already know the bullet point number one, we made the decision to do 2021 virtually. A virtual review has certain attributes that are common sense obvious: no travel. We expanded the timeline. We had substantial information technology demands. We had to train hundreds of people how to use Zoom. We had to help programs mount materials electronically because there's no resource room where people are gonna be able to look at supplemental materials. Next slide, please. We couldn't get onto the facilities. We couldn't look at laboratories and computer centers and libraries and the like. Everything needed to be virtual, and everybody was scrambling as to how best to do it. Obviously, interviews were conducted virtually, and the exit meeting with the dean and the provost and the president was conducted virtually. We did something really novel. We took feedback from every visit and posted it in an internal communication methodology so that the visits that were coming up could learn in real time what the teams that just came back learned. And we spent a lot of time, effort, and energy talking to people about the following concept. You are not going to judge these programs by their effective response to COVID-19 in the spring of 2020. That is not what you're doing. What you're doing is you're conducting their cycle, their accreditation cycle, the blip in continuity, but making judgments about the trajectory of the programs and the program and their delivery. Next slide, please. We spent huge amounts of time, effort, and energy modifying our training by all the volunteer organizations that participate in training: the Accreditation Council Training Committee, the Commission Training Committees, the ABET staff. Everybody had a hand in training our PE program evaluators and team chairs. I have a staff of adjunct accreditation directors that helped the team chairs that had large reviews with logistic challenges. We also, the next to last bullet point is somewhat arcane for you, but it's an issue related to how the accreditation management system aided the delivery of information at the very end of the review on site. Next slide, please. So as I said, we did 882 programs at over 300 institutions, and this is how it was by commission. And we did them all, and we're in the process of editing and reviewing documents right now. Next slide, please. We collected, ABET being a continuous quality improvement, quality management system enterprise, ISO certified. We spent a lot of time, effort, and energy collecting data on how well we did. We collected data on PEVs ranking PEVs, team chairs ranking PEVs, PEVs ranking team chairs, programs ranking team chairs, giving us feedback on how the virtual visit went. We have thousands of data points, and the analysis suggests that things worked. The Academic Advisory Council, with some urging from Jeff and from me, agreed to telephone program leadership and institutional leadership because we thought that people were getting sick and tired of filling out surveys. And we wanted some honest from the shoulder feedback on how well or how poorly we were doing. We also received advice from the Academic Advisory Council that they thought that this thing went so well that we wanted to provide some certain solution to programs that were clamoring to know what's the status of events for 21-22. Next slide, please. I gave you this summary generally. The feedback is that everything worked. We learned a lot about Zoom. We learned a lot about accessing supplemental material. We learned a lot about lab tours, and we're pushing that learning back out to programs that will be visited in 21. Many responses said everything worked just fine. And of course, other people raised their hand and said, yeah, but you didn't do this and you didn't do that. But nobody said, I'm out of here. Everybody agreed that if we had to do it again, we could. Next slide, please. The most important bullet point here on this slide, the most important conclusion is, well, everybody has a different reason for liking one way over the other. Everybody wants to know the answer as soon as possible. And this presentation was what I brought to the board of directors. We explained to the board of directors at ABET what the consequences of what we were doing were, best that we understood. And we recommended, next slide, please, that with this demand, I realize that now you want to say, well, how does this compare to the last one? Steph, next slide, please. Here's a comparison of the cycle that we're coming up 21-22 versus the cycle that we're in the middle of now finishing out. Everything is up. We're close to 1,100 programs at 50% more institutions. So next slide, please. We recommended to the board that they acknowledge the complexity of what we were doing, but recommended that we do virtual visits in 21-22 and announce it immediately so that everybody can plan. We continue to use the feedback that we got. We're enhancing our training. We're preparing some guidance for programs and institutions that will be under review. I wanted you all to see this. I wanted you to know that it was a lot of time, effort, and energy, a lot of work from a lot of people that helped us to come to this conclusion, and the board ratified this decision. Now, all along, we're still working on many, many other things. ABET has not shut down. Headquarters is closed, but everybody's working remotely. The commissions are working remotely. The staff is working remotely. Program evaluators conducted all the visits from the kitchen and the living room, but we got it done. In the meanwhile, and I'd like to acknowledge at this point, we're working on criteria modifications. We're working on the inclusion of inclusion, diversity and equity into our program, into our general and program criteria. I'd like to acknowledge at this point those of you from Big 10 Plus who sent ABET leadership a communication regarding your support of our IDE efforts. We appreciate that. We're working to make the incorporation of those concepts meaningful in ABET accreditation criteria. Now I'm going to stop talking. I'm going to take a drink. We're going to take the slides down, and Jeff and I are going to answer your questions. Questions about what I just showed you, questions about something I didn't talk about, questions that are burning, challenges that you'd like to raise. We have until 45 minutes after the hour. And my best understanding is that we have 70 or so people. So the meeting is yours. We'll do our best.
And if you all can just use the reactions button to raise your hand, and I'll call on people as they raise their hand. If you're not able to do that, go ahead and put a question in the chat and we'll get to that as well. But if you can prioritize just raising your hand, that'd be great. Let's start with, is it Babak?
Yes, thank you. Thank you, Joe, for that presentation. Babak PhD, New York Institute of Technology. My question is actually more of a long-term nature. We were fortunate that our last ABET visit was in 2017, and so we sort of straddled this COVID pandemic period. But still having nightmare of the 4 simultaneous visits that we had to accommodate with the complex scheduling between the team chairs and the PEVs for the 4 different programs over that 3-4 day period. All of us as deans obviously have taken best practices coming hopefully out of this pandemic eventually. has there been any discussion on, and I know it's kind of difficult with, the volunteers, giving a block of their time within the visit period to sort of distribute some of the activities of the visit to be relegated to remote, and then leave the most critical in-person time for the things that the TVs and the team chairs really cannot do remotely. Thank you.
So
Uh,
I'll go ahead,
Go
Joe.
ahead, Jeff.
So
Please
one
go
of the
ahead.
things that the AAC's been discussing, and as we gather this feedback, has been, the electronic materials work great. There was so much work that was done ahead of time. There were so many questions that could be answered. And it wasn't that waste of having a room set aside. The other that seemed to have been good were the virtual lab tours. And we're kind of getting some mixed bags from that. Some were very good. We didn't have to do anything. Others were, can you take us around with a cell phone and just show us specific items? But I do believe that's going to be some of the training that's going to come out for programs. In fact, I just sent Joe one of our lab tours yesterday. We didn't have to do anything. They reviewed them up front. We had one question. By the time the visit was over, it was all resolved. But I think we do.
Broadly speaking,
Yeah, I think we
broadly
do.
speaking, lessons that and mechanisms that we used in this virtual outlay are going to be adopted where appropriate. And I don't mean to be dodging your question without detail, but faculty interviews can be done before the Sunday through Tuesday. Laboratory tours can be done, examination of display materials, which has a downside. We found that some PEVs with more time to examine supplemental materials examine them. So we have to write some guidance about how much of enough is enough. But your point is, you're on point. We're going to take this learnings, including management of our volunteers. We discovered that it was important to say thank you to all of them. So we scheduled 4 town halls where we invited volunteers to come and just tell us what was on their mind. What a huge success that was. Volunteers who never really understood where ABET headquarters was started to talk to us about things they liked and things they didn't. And it was a substantial community exercise that we'll keep forever. So thank you for raising that issue. We will take away learnings. Steph?
Are there any other questions? I don't see any hands right now.
I saw Jenna on this, so I know one of the questions she had last year, being a new program, wanting to go for accreditation, that they were said to hold off, but any new programs, and correct me if I'm wrong, Joe, any new programs will be eligible for a review this year.
That's right. We haven't given up. We haven't given up the process of readiness review. We still want programs that have never dealt with ABET to prepare a readiness review, because the readiness review screens programs and institutions that are just flat out not ready. But we no longer put a restriction on the fact that you have no one else operating ABET accredited programs on campus. We will, this year we postponed 115 programs, and next year we won't do that. So new programs and campuses without any ABET presence are welcome to apply, but we'll use the readiness review process as well. Now, 60 people thought this would be interesting enough to sign up for. I
So
presented those slides.
So we want to hear your feedback. What would you like to see ABET do? It doesn't have to be virtual, but go back to past experiences. If you had a virtual visit, this is your opportunity.
So just to be sure, for the fall, has it been decided already? It's virtual or a combination? Will there be a change of
Yes,
mind or it has been decided?
It has been decided. It's posted on our website, and we are in the process of communicating by email to each and every program and institution right now. But the decision was made weeks ago, and it's posted on our website. We're going to be virtual in the fall. To borrow a phrase from my legal friends and my accounting friends, we learned with the institutional leadership that with whom we spoke, people wanted some certain solution. Tell me what you're going to do, one way or the other. Just tell me so that I can plan for it. So we will be doing virtual.
Thank you.
We have another question from Babak.
Thank you. I took the liberty since there wasn't a long line in here. So thank you for indulging me. So the second question that came to my mind is with respect to the tolerance towards, online offerings, I should say remote offering, a more appropriate term for it, of courses. So obviously, every university had to shift into some sort of a remote learning during the pandemic, but obviously all of us have built some digital capacity in our institutions that we're not gonna sort of relinquish, even after a possible end to the pandemic. How's ABET's view of now offering a percentage of an undergraduate program in a non-in-person format, and how would it be impacting future accreditation visits?
Thank you for asking that question, Babak. I don't want to draw you into a conversation about the intricate detail of ABET criteria. So let me just give you an overview comment. There is nothing in the ABET accreditation criteria that dictate modality of program delivery, nothing. So when we saw what was happening in the second week in March, those of you who were up for a review may remember that we put a notice immediately up on the web saying, do not worry, move to online. Don't worry about the modality which you're using for grades. Don't write us, ask for permission. Please proceed in the best possible manner that you can. Criteria, there's nothing in the ABET criteria that talk about delivery. The only issue for our website is there are programs that declare themselves 100% online, and we list those after we examine whether the program's claim is accurate. But almost every program that you all oversee delivers some component of the work online, and we acknowledge that. You just need to wait. If you're up for review, we need to give the team chair and the program evaluator an opportunity to examine the materials and how it's presented, interview faculty, but there's no restriction. You can do no % online and you can do 100% online. Demonstrate the achievement of the learning outcomes, of the student outcomes. That's the highest value for us, for you and for us.
Hey, Joe and Jeff, we have a question now from Lorenzo Smith.
Hi, Joe. Could you offer some of your remarks on?
Go ahead, Lorenzo.
Yep, okay. Am I okay?
Yeah, go ahead.
Joe, can you offer some of your remarks on what you consider some of the hallmarks of self-study reports that are just make it really easy and in terms of the process of absorbing the information, and on the flip side, some of the hallmarks of self-study reports that really just make it exceptionally difficult for reviewers to go through and evaluate the information.
I don't want to appear flip, but I'll answer the second part of the question first. A 1,000-page self-study prepared with the understanding that there's only one real reader, and that's the PEV. The team chair, don't believe that the team chair reads your self-study. He or she may leaf through it when the PEV points to something unusual, but there's only one. The audience for your self-study is the program evaluator. And if you prepare a 1,000-page self-study and tell him, listen, it's all in there, that's a belligerent act. The easiest self-study to read is one that follows the template gracefully and with the minimum amount of verbiage. The best self-studies answer the questions simply and directly.
Thank you.
Great. Joe and Jeff, we have a couple questions in the chat. We have one, given the update, could you expand on other tips for institutions going up for review this fall to prepare for the review?
Yes, before I do that, I remembered something else I wanted to tell Lorenzo, but then I got caught up in the Zoom. Lorenzo, when you prepare a program self-study for 1, 2, 5, 10 programs, ask somebody unfamiliar with your work to read it. Somebody on campus who's non-technical, ask them to read it and respect when they come back to you and say, what does this mean? What is this connected to? The PEV will be forever in your debt if the thing is edited by a non-technical person. I'm sorry, now.
Okay, Joe and Jeff, can you expand on some other tips for institutions going up for review this fall to prepare for the review?
Yes, supplemental materials. We are going to publish some guidance for the institutions, but I urge you all to find early whether or not your online learning management system allows access from outsiders, or if it doesn't, ask your IT staff to help you with a secure file share methodology to which you can upload supplemental materials that provide easy access for the program evaluator. The tip here is to index them intelligently. Don't just upload 1,000-page images and say it's all there, good luck. That would be another belligerent act. But everybody's been struggling with how do I present the display materials and what do I present? There are philosophies about how to present by course, present by the achievement of a learning of student outcome. That'll be up to you. We'll provide some advice. We're in the process of preparing that now, and there won't be criteria. There'll be advice. People can take or leave it, accept the advice. Jeff?
I know in my calls with institutional reps that had visits, it was predominantly Canvas was being used, and the folks that I talked to, we had our visits, we used Blackboard. I did talk to one institution, they created from scratch their own database. I probably would not recommend that, and use your learning management system. It worked out very well, but Joe made a good point. Make sure that your folks in IT will allow access from off campus to non-employees, non-students. It took us, there were lots of forms that had to go back and forth to be signed and then approved by the chief information officer to get access for them. I think the other point for visits is start early.
Another piece of advice has to do with laboratory tours. Laboratory tours can be done well recorded, but they can't be aimless wandering. So prepare a script for your leader and let him or her follow the script and move through the laboratory and demonstrate operation of machinery or equipment, safety concerns. And there's no harm in having this laboratory tour prepared early. Allow the program evaluator to see it and let him or her feed back to you. You know what I missed? I missed the presence or absence of X. There's no reason why, given that this is going to be a virtual experience in the fall, that it can't be an iterative one. Now, you're all busy delivering programs. I'm respectful of that. And ABET is not something that you want to spend unmeasured amounts of time on. But the communication between your department or program head and your PEV, if established early, will pay off in a substantial way.
And I think reaching out to colleagues, I mean, I'd be more than happy to share our script out, and we did every tour the same way. But one of the institutions I did talk to, one of their departments had put music to it and grand openings, like as if they were going to apply for an Oscar. That is not what is needed.
Okay, I have another question here in the chat. For an institution without an ABET program as of yet, how do we know that we are ready, in quotes, for the readiness review?
At the end of the slides, there was an email address, accreditation@abet.org. If you're apprehensive about a particular element of your readiness, drop us a note. If you want to have somebody from another institution take a look at your readiness review submission or chat with you, that's advice I give people. When people come to me at exhibition halls and say, I want to apply for ABET accreditation of these programs, I don't know where to start, I tell them with a smile on my face, call a friend. Call somebody who's already been successful. Talk to them about your program, whether you're ready or not. I can't tell you if you're ready. The readiness review is designed to let you know if you're ready to engage. But I understand the question to be, am I ready for a readiness review? Call a friend.
Okay, I don't have any more questions in the chat. Anyone else would like to raise their
Is
hand?
this what you expected to have happen today? Jeff and I have traditionally wandered through the room, stopping at tables, asking people with fuzzy looks on their face, something bothering you, what can I help you with? We can't do that here, so we're a little bit at a disadvantage. Oh, Molly Gribb raised her hand.
Hello. So we've been so out of it. Hi, we've been so out of everything. So other than the switch to virtual meetings, what else can you tell us that we should be thinking about in terms of ABET accreditation? Anything new?
What else can we? Well, yes, we're working hard on the incorporation of inclusion, diversity, and equity principles into our accreditation criteria. And that's something that we'll focus on in the year or two to come. It's hard work.
Mm-hmm.
Anything new? We've revised the presentation of criteria in several commissions in order to extract from the program criteria anything that looks like outcomes. We don't want to see outcomes in program criteria. We are offering we are providing a concerted effort to deal with data science. Data science is a challenge because data science doesn't belong in one place over another. And we're working hard to identify a means by which to accredit programs in data science in the Computing Accreditation Commission and in the Applied and Natural Science Accreditation Commission. Data science, for those of you who aren't spending a lot of time with this, is a challenge because there's a mathematics statistics component, a computational component, and a domain expertise component. When I say domain expertise, I mean like meteorology is a big data science challenge. Immunotherapy is a big data science challenge. So how is ABET going to accredit programs like that? And the answer is we're going to do it and we'll do it carefully. So we're working on that. We're also working on cybersecurity for 2-year programs. This is a remarkable development for the Computing Accreditation Commission. Cybersecurity is important, and we can do that at our 4-year level. But not to compete directly with badges and certificates, but there are men and women enrolled in two-year programs who want to study cybersecurity and go to work. And we're developing a means by which to accredit those programs within the Computing Accreditation Commission. So that's novel. What else can I tell you to watch for? We miss you on the Academic Advisory Council.
You haven't been traveling much, have you, though?
No, I haven't been traveling much at all.
Yeah. Thank you.
Joe, I've got a question for you. Joe, the guiding language speaks to quality assurance, and just could you just offer your reflections on do you see that the quality being maintained or growing over the years? Just kind of the bird's eye view of the direction of engineering education. I'd be interested in your thoughts on kind of your observations on where engineering education is going. Do you see that quality being maintained or growing?
Lorenzo, I would be happy to answer your question. Help me, where are you from? I see the logo, but I can't read it.
Sacramento State. That's Sacramento State, CSU
Okay,
Sacramento. Yep.
Okay, great. ABET relies on a large pool of volunteers. I was a volunteer since 1987 and did not join the staff until 2011. I was an industry program evaluator, team chair, commissioner, member of the board, etc. I worked in medical device design and development and in IT. Why am I telling you that? Because in medical device design and development, you deal with the FDA just like everybody in America is learning about vaccine development, dealing with the FDA. And I learned a lot about quality management systems, and I learned a lot about continuous quality improvement. I am proud to report to you that since the development and introduction of EC 2000, over 4,400 programs in engineering, technology, computing, and applied and natural science have an internal quality management system. If I ask men and women in program staff, are you delivering on the learning outcomes designed for your program? The answer is yes. And I ask them, how do you know? And they can tell me. I take great pride, not personal pride, but pride on behalf of ABET for doing that. When we occasionally have a program or an institution that says, we're out of here, we don't want to do this anymore, I don't argue. I just say, that's fine. I understand sometimes pressures, push and pull, politics. But when you continue to present your courses and your programs, how will you know if you're doing a good job? Now, there are men and women on faculties who take offense at that. I'm a member of the National Academy. I get that. I'm not quarreling with your talent and qualification. I'm asking, how do you know if the students are learning what you're pitching? How do you know? So I would respectfully argue, since the introduction of EC 2000 in the late 1990s and 2000 until today, 20 years later, the quality of technology education in the United States and around the world is grown substantially, because people know what needs to be done in their own house and they measure it for themselves. We are not the police. We do not come to see if you're doing what you said you're doing. We're coming to give you an external third-party view of the effectiveness of your quality management system. And when thought about that way, it becomes less burdensome psychologically. I realize that there's still work that needs to be done to prepare for an ABET visit. I don't discount that. But the value of doing it is you can ask your program chairs, as the dean, you can ask your program chairs, do you know if you are successful? And they can answer you with facts and data.
Thank you.
Joe, we have another question from Babak.
Thank you. I'm looking for that star for the highest number of questions today. So
He knows I'm a New Yorker, and he knows I'm a New Yorker, and he's coming after me.
well, these are all friendly questions, but I really appreciate these are actually questions that have been on my mind, and yeah, I think it would be beneficial for everyone. So with very, very few notable exceptions, majority of universities have been facing significant financial impacts from the pandemic. hiring freezes and all sorts of things are, a lap of every dean that I've spoke with. So I know ABET has been actually admirably very clear that they don't bean count in terms of number of faculty. The policy has been demonstrate that the number of faculty for the program is sufficient to meet the student outcomes. Having said that, will be even a more forgiving, should I say, outlook from the PEVs and team chairs in terms of the programs that are going to be up for accreditation, reaccreditation in the next 3 or 4 years, in light of the fact that we're going to be hiring very, very, very few new faculty, if any. Thank you.
The answer to your question is contained in my answer to the last question. Are you delivering the student outcomes? How do you know? Well, we do this and this and this, and where we have a hole, we plug it with this adjunct and we get this done, we get it done. We're counting on you to get it done. You won't find in our criteria the number of faculty you need to do X, Y, or Z. You know that.
Thank you. Yep.
Yeah.
Let's see. I don't see any other hands raised. Anyone have any other questions? I know this meeting actually has a hard stop in about 4 minutes, so if we'll take 1 or 2 last questions.
Please don't be shy about writing to accreditation@abet.org, or if you want to write me directly, jsussman@abet.org. Everything gets answered. It doesn't get answered immediately, as you might imagine, but we do the very best we can. We're hoping to go back into our office in Baltimore sometime in the summer, but that's all dependent upon what everybody else is worried about. Safety, security. Well, I'm hoping that this is what you signed up for when you saw that there was an ABET update. Anybody have any questions about the content of what I blew through in those slides? Oh, Nathan, I see you finally figured out how to not make yourself host 500.
I didn't want to show you up, Joe. I like to stand under the radar. Well, Stephanie, anything final? Stephanie, Joe, Michael, anybody? Any final words from ABET before we close this out?
One quick question just
We
came
have
up
not-
in the chat, Joe. There's a question about the July meeting with team chairs, and will that be virtual?
Yes, it will. The meeting with team chairs, which we call the Institutional Rep Day, is being planned for July. It will be virtual. You will get an opportunity to meet with your team chair. And quite frankly, in this particular instance, those meetings are far more intimate and disclosing than the group meetings that occur at the hotel in Baltimore. So we've had great success with these institutional rep meetings, and I look forward to your team chair reaching out to you.
I guess, Nathan, I just say one thing. Thanks very much for having us here. I think this is important for us to talk on a regular basis with you, find out what, kind of questions, issues you have for us, and kind of let you know what we're doing. So thanks for the opportunity.
Absolutely. EDI's agenda is better for having you on it. So,
Ladies and gentlemen, that man who just spoke is Michael Milligan. He's my boss. He's the CEO and executive director of ABET. He's a good man. He's an engineer.
all right, folks. Well, I will see you over at
Thank you all.
the final session, and thanks a lot.
Thank you.
Thanks, Jeff.
Thanks, very informative.
All right. Thanks, Stephanie.
Thank you. Let me know when you hear about your brother-in-law.
Will do.
I'll be thinking about y'all.
Yeah, at least it's not far from us, so we can get, depending on the time of day in Atlanta, we can get down to Emory in probably 2.5 hours or so.
Oh, that's good. Okay. All right. I'll be thinking of you all.
All right. Thank you.
Great
Thanks,
to see you.
Joe.